have spent several years in trying to understand quantum physics, so 2 minutes of quantum crash course is a very difficult thing to do. So what I would say is that, quantum is something which, it's an area of physics which becomes relevant when the size of a particle becomes very small, okay? So you, me, everyone in this room, we are all governed by laws of quantum physics. But then we don't really see it manifest in what we do because we are very, large in some sense. So when something becomes very small, like an electron, small particles, a small particle of light, photon, that is when quantum physics becomes important. And so just to give you an example of, what would happen when things become quantum, something which is called tunneling, okay? An example I always like to take. So an electron, when it is moving very fast, it reaches a barrier, it doesn't stop. There is a finite possibility that it actually crosses through that barrier, which is very, very high.
Harry Potter-like.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly the 9 3/4. The platform 9 3/4 is much motivated by this tunneling phenomena. But Harry Potter does it in reality. But if you and I were to, I've tried this actually, go and hit myself against the wall, I've always come back very disappointed. and my, child who's right here, she was also, encouraged to do this when she was small. Now she doesn't do it anymore. And it never works, right?
So you have a blue forehead, Raika.
Yeah, Raika is, very intelligent now. So these are the kind of things, which, of course, we could also be affected by. It doesn't happen because we are very large. And so these sort of counterintuitive, I don't call it weird because, that's my job. So I don't have a weird job, So it's counterintuitive. So these are the kind of things which make quantum physics different.
But Urbasi, let me push you to make it a little bit even more simpler than that. At its heart, if I understand it correctly, and I'm playing the interlocutor here because I'm at sub-zero knowledge, so maybe that'll help others understand it, is that typically all things that in classical physics, everything has fixed properties.
Right.
But the heart of quantum physics is that particles have no fixed properties.
Absolutely.
Till you actually see it or measure it.
See it or measure it. And so this is something which is very counterintuitive. So, our previous speaker is sitting here and, he's sort of looking at us right now. And I look at my family, my expectation is he's still looking at us. So this is the kind of thing we are used to, that our property, the fact that you are sitting there, I'm sitting here, these are things which are independent of whether this audience is even listening to us or not. But if you think about a quantum particle, it does not have any fixed property unless you measure it. So it can have, a plethora of properties, and only when you measure, it reveals what it wants to reveal. And so it's fundamentally different, let's say, from our, classical reality.
Right. So, again, I'm going to share with the audience that at the heart of this, it's like Einstein said, because he was being challenged, he said, I would really like to think that the moon exists, whether we see it or not.
Absolutely.
But quantum physics challenges that notion that does anything exist unless we see it? Urbashi's refused to let me go down that path, but Vedantic thought says that this is all Maya and this is illusion. Yes. I won't take you there so fast. But just help us understand 3 basic things about quantum, which will help us understand why China, America, and now India are trying to get on top of it, which is that what makes a quantum computer faster than the supercomputer? Why can it do it 185 million times faster than a supercomputer?
Yeah. So now, of course, I just, because I am actually a, practicing quantum physicist, I just want to say that, a quantum computer does not make everything 185 million times faster. So, there are a specific class of problems where this works. So just, my disclaimers will be there as we go on, because I actually make these things in the lab. So I am an experimental physicist. So the basic idea which makes this quantum computer work is what is called the principle of superposition. Okay, so what is superposition? It's a very interesting topic. So, the fact that some of you are smiling at me, some of you are not following what I'm saying already, but then some of you are following a little bit and not following a little bit. So, this thing that, you can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, that is what is called superposition. It's essentially the English word, that we are, a mix of various possibilities. And so this is what happens in a quantum particle, like a light switch, it can be on and off at the same time, okay? And so this superposition gives us this, possibility of this particle being in, let's say, even infinite number of properties can exist simultaneously. So this simultaneous existence of infinite probabilities gives rise to this very fast, computing, because it can make use of one of many instead of just one fixed, outcome. Yeah. So this is the principle which makes the quantum computer that fast. Yeah.
Are you with Urbasi on this? Do you understand what she's talking about, or have we? Like she said, are you smiling because? Not really. Okay. So Urbasi, I'm going to be your translator, if
Absolutely,
I may.
Yeah.
We were talking about the computers being this fast because at least we know that a computer operates in a binary of 0 and 1. But the qubits, which is the fundamental, unit of quantum physics, can be as a 0 and a 1 at the same time.
Absolutely. So it's a little bit of 0 and a little bit of 1.
So that's why it can do every infinite possibility. It can very quickly analyze all of that and give you all the possibilities, which, think of it as a old cow, a horse cart, in comparison to a Ford motor.
Okay.
Just in terms of speed.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is just, to give you an example, if you have a 50 qubit quantum computer, then you can do something as fast as it would, take an ordinary computer. The time it would take is the age of the universe. So in some sense, you cannot even conceive of doing that,
right,
using even all the classical computers taken together. So that is what we are talking about for a certain class of problems.
Right.
Yeah.
So, let's bring it down to the here and now. There's a race between all these governments and ours now to harness this, because in the area of communication and cryptography and security, this is a very, very powerful new force.
Yeah.
The moment that somebody really cracks the quantum computer, no information in this world is going to be safe, because that quantum computer can crack anything in the world. So you did an experiment that is going to help, create secure communication for India. So can you talk about that in the simplest terms?
Yeah, this is actually our main, area of interest. So what happens is, so when you have, I see a lady in front, she's using a cell phone. So one of the things we are doing using a cell phone is we are doing, buying things online. Amazon, Flipkart, we are always buying things. We are, we are sharing our banking information with a third party. So now the point is that, if you're doing this, currently what we are doing, we are assuming that the information I'm giving is actually only taken by the intended second party. So, but suppose you get hold of this information and you are malicious, then of course my bank account is, gets down to 0. So that is something we don't want. So now, how are we doing this? Of course, we still have some security. What we are currently doing is we are basing this security on certain problems being very hard. Okay, and so this hardness of a problem is very subjective. So something that is hard for you may not be very hard for a very, very efficient computer. And a quantum computer can actually break this security. So this is proven that we can run algorithms which will break this security. And quantum computers are becoming very real. So what we are doing now as a community is we are coming up with a method of doing this security, banking transaction, voting, all these strategic examples. We are doing this by using quantum physics itself. So if you have a quantum threat, you have a quantum solution. And that is called quantum communication. Okay? And so we are using laws of quantum physics now. So it's a paradigm shift in security. So we are, getting rid of the current means. So the whole idea is that we will replace the entire security that we have globally with the quantum analog. And our lab is the first one to work on quantum security in India. And however, if you and I are going to share some information using quantum security is not very interesting beyond a point. Yeah. We want our country to secretly, be able to share something with a friendly country, and some other country which is malicious should not get hold of this information. So the distance is a very important problem here. How do you solve this distance problem? And what we are doing is we are using an out-of-the-box solution where we are using a satellite to, as a trusted courier. So the satellite is interacting with me, satellite will interact with, let's say, Canada, and India and Canada can share quantum security. Right. So this is the, big problem we are attacking.
I just want to draw the audience a little bit back into this conversation, because I'm getting this kind of vibration, that we've lost some of the audience, is that when we are talking about the qubit, you had a lovely analogy, which is the typical, I don't know the Tamil cinema equivalent, but in Bollywood, you always had that Ram and Shyam, the twins that got lost at birth and could always feel each other no matter whether they'd met or not. So in quantum physics, you have the quantum entanglement, right?
Yeah.
So can you...
Yeah, so quantum entanglement, the best way to explain is by this Lost at Kumbh Mela example, so that has come in lots of Bollywood films at least. And so the whole idea is that these twins, even if one of them is lost and the other grows up somewhere, that's the usual example, they share this correlation because they were born, almost
Connected.
simultaneously. And so this is what happens in quantum entanglement, that two particles, they are born not almost simultaneously, in this case simultaneously, and they share a correlation which they share even if they are separated by thousands of kilometers. And so quantum entanglement is used as a resource in quantum security as well as quantum computers, for instance. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just trying to draw it back to Urvashi's experiment that, the Nobel winner who won that, he proved without, it's called a loophole-free experiment, that two particles in quantum entanglement, correct me if I'm wrong,
No, you're right.
Do actually have this Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, that you do something to Ram and Shyam at the other end of the galaxy is also going to immediately have the same reaction.
Yeah.
Am I right?
And this happens in the movies also, right? Yeah, so you are torturing one and the other is
Feels
feeling
the pain.
So this was a Ranveer Singh film, no? Very recent one called Circus.
Right.
Which happened, where it happened in a very dramatic way. He would feel the electric shocks. Somebody else was getting the shock and he would feel the shock. So,
Right.
so of course, it's a very popular description, but that is what happens in quantum entanglement.
Right.
Yeah.
But your experiment then further went and proved that even a particle in itself, in its solo self,
Yeah.
has quantumness. And I
Absolutely.
was reading all the articles, around praising your experiment, and it said that it actually now completely questions the notion of reality.
Absolutely.
Because you can take this upwards, and there's no reason why it stops at atoms or further. And I read a phrase which literally said, this breaks the legs of the table and chair on which we are sitting, which means that does this chair exist? Does this table exist? Does Shoma exist if you're not looking at me? Is my hair black if you're not looking at it and making it black? So it questions the whole notion of reality.
Whole notion of reality. Yeah.
So that, now answer that, Urvashi. Are we really sitting in an illusion right now?
It depends on whether you're looking at the audience. I mean, but then, yeah, I mean, the one thing we have to realize is that we are not yet in the quantum domain. So, we are very classical. So we're made up of these quantum particles. But together, we actually still are classical. So, your hair will remain black. But then I think we had this beautiful discussion that, it's because, it appears black to us. But what about bumblebees and things like that? So different animals may have different perceptions of what your hair color is. And so again, that brings us to this macroscopic vision of reality, that, it depends on the observer. So this is what quantum physics is all about. It's all an observer-dependent phenomenon. So it depends on, what you are measuring, what you are observing, what property you see. And so what we went on to do is take this experiment further. So Anton Zeilinger and other, colleagues who won the Nobel Prize, they actually did this for two particles which were separated, like this Ram and Shyam example that we took. But now the question is, why do we need to be twins in order to see whether we are real or not? Even a single particle we need to be able to do. So we did this experiment in the single particle domain. And, we did it in a way that hasn't been possible in 40 years. So in fact, we are very pleased with that, we were able to show the lack of realism for a single particle. Please remember that quantum particles are not real, in the sense that, the properties are only dependent on what you measure. So this is what we went on to show.
I don't know, through this entire conversation, have we kind of communicated the heart of what we are talking about? How many of you would raise your hand and
all
say
of
you're
you are
getting it?
confused, because that would be the message here. Because, it is very difficult to, I'm sincerely hoping that you didn't follow everything. Because
Right.
if that is true, then you're with us. Because, it's an entire field from us. So,
Right. No, but I was saying that at least if we communicate this fundamental thing, which is, I would say, I would want the takeaway from this session to be two. One is that why is everyone harnessing this? Is the sheer power of this, that just imagine that we're operating in one choice. The computers are operating on one highway, and here comes somebody that can quickly go zigzag zoom over all the possible highways and give you an
reach the answer exponentially faster.
Faster.
So this 187 million is an example, but the idea is that something which would take the age of the universe now takes seconds. And so so I just want to give you one or two examples of, problems which actually are getting benefited from this. So as opposed to, say, AI, which is, much more recent, let's say, it was a beautiful topic, but quantum physics is more than 100 years old. And so your phone, or whether, your MRI machine, or the fact that, some of us get our eye vision corrected using lasers, these are all because of quantum physics. So it's something that we are all using inadvertently. So just to, sometimes the conversation leads to this thing that, everything is very speculative, but it's actually very real. But having said that, now we talk about quantum computers, and there is a question, are these real? Are they doing anything real? So one of the big things that a quantum computer can do is actually make new materials, okay? And so give you an example, one of the things which we are all worried about, let's say as conscientious citizens, is a clean environment, okay? So we all want the environment to be clean because naturally we have contributed to polluting it. So one is green energy, that is okay. But the other is, you come up with a material which absorbs the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and just essentially cleans up the environment around you. You don't have such a material, but a quantum computer can help you build one. And this is something which is already being researched globally, clean environment. The other is, for instance, COVID. Something that, now maybe hopefully some of you are following something, otherwise we are doing something completely wrong. But COVID is a situation we have all been through. And so India did beautifully in COVID. We came up with the vaccines, all of us probably are vaccinated, but many countries didn't do it because they couldn't, right? So the idea is that we want to reach, want those vaccines to reach them. So what prevents us? Countries are not next to each other. Transportation. COVID vaccine has to be, in a temperature, certain temperature, and they also expire. So many new, conditions are coming in which prevent me from just sending the vaccine to the less fortunate country. So this is an optimization problem. And quantum computers can solve optimization problems way faster than the classical ones. So these are examples, where quantum computers are already being used. So this is not a matter of fiction. And that is why we are entering this race, because we want to use it for social good. I'm actually involved in using quantum computers for social good. I'm working on using it for the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, working with an institute in Geneva for this. And so we are actually, and of course you brought up he was the
doomsayer.
Yeah. So then I don't want to be that, but then any technology has a flip side. And so today I'm trying to make better, environment or give you a COVID vaccine faster. Somebody else will use it to crack my security and take all my, secrets away. So we need to, ensure that we have good governance for this.
Right.
And that is something we are working on. Yeah.
So I just wanted our audience to understand that where are we at in this? I was saying IBM just shared a post about the fact that they have a computer that has 400 qubits.
430 odd.
430. So when we're talking about the qubits, just to help us get more fascinated by this conversation, here is a scientist that's dealing with a material that has to be you have to deal with that material.
The picture that you show is for a superconducting device. So it needs to be at a very, very low temperature for this to work.
Minus 400? Is that? Or
well, it's microkelvin.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but India is now able to harness 4 or 5 qubits.
Yeah.
But America is already, IBM has a 400 qubit strong computer, and it said that in the next 5 years or 7 years, it's going to get to
4,000 qubits.
4,000. That's again that exponential speed coming. It's taken them that long. So help us understand, Urbasi, that India is at 4 qubits, and we're already saying like, wow, you've done something fantastic.
Now is my time to defend the country. What do you do when you're in a forum like this? At least you should go with the impression that we are actually doing very well. So IBM has worked on this for 2.5 decades, and they have been resourced very, very heavily. Now we have a national quantum mission with a certain amount of resource. China has spent billions of dollars on it over the last few decades. So, at some point we need to realize these things take resources. We have produced the 4 or 5 that we have with what we had. But now with this pumping in of some resource, and hopefully others also pitch in. We need philanthropy. You know, our philanthropists just go and do brain research and cancer research, but this is actually equally important because it will help the brain research and cancer research. We can come up with new drugs. I mean, drugs for good causes. I mean, of course. So, just because, I don't want to be quoted in new drugs. Yeah, so new medicines, right? So we are, at a very, very important stage where we have a critical, number of people who are working on all these technologies, who are looking at this national mission as something which will catapult us to, the higher number. Because this number is not just about adding, just to make it clear that it is about actually changing the whole structure.
Right.
And so we want to go to, from my thing, I want a global quantum communication network. So the entire world should be connected using quantum security. And so this is a tall, ask. It requires resources.
Right.
And now we can hope to go there, right? So we are doing very well with what we had and with very little support.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, just to bring the geopolitical angle, like China has a 2,300 kilometer quantum secure link already, and we're at like harnessing 4 qubits. And again, I want to play her ambassador for their field of knowledge, is that the qubits, I mean, these particles that we're talking about, for them to exist in these infinite possibilities, they have to exist in a way where they don't get measured, because the moment there's any intervention, you measure it, it becomes something it becomes something you can define, and so it loses its quantum power. So this is a constant riddle that they are chasing, that how do you harness this? Because any noise, as they call it, even an inkling that it is an experiment, it is going to get measured, makes it lose its mysterious quality, So one, you have to do it in that level of cold. Then you have to not let it know that it's getting harnessed. So there's some really fascinating, mysterious aspects.
Just to add to this, you need to be able to access it, but then you need to be able to do it in a way that it doesn't lose its quantum property. So it's like, a constant tussle. Because if you do this a little too much, then you lose its quantumness. And if you lose its quantumness, then there's no point in accessing it. So there are all these criteria which need to be simultaneously satisfied. So it's not, it's not trivial. So that I don't want to
so I want
how to do it.
I want to take us to a little more popular culture.
Excellent, that's my thing.
So we've been showing this cat right through. Of course,
I have been looking at it, yes.
So it's Schrodinger's cat, which again kind of helped sum this up. Famously, Schrodinger's cat could be dead or alive till you open it and you decide. Then it takes on whether it's dead or it's alive.
So it was there in the Big Bang Theory, right? I don't know whether the audience is familiar with this sitcom called Big Bang Theory. Half an episode was there on Schrodinger cat. So we have made it to pop culture, not me.
Right. But I'm going to ask you that, we're talking about physical experiments, about national security issues, cryptography, communication, computing, etc.
Yeah.
But there's a whole universe, and these are very, very serious physicists who genuinely believe that there is a multiverse, that we all have avatars, that this is only one avatar of us, that you decided to marry your husband, but that was a quantum fork in which another version of you did not marry him and you walked down.
I think another version of is thinking about Aditi Rao Hydari already. So that is a possibility. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Right. But they're very, very serious people, serious physicists who genuinely believe the multiverse is real, avatars are real. David Deutsch, again, there are all these fathers of these technologies, but the father of quantum AI says that very quickly, or in the near future, we could upload ourselves into quantum computers and see what all our avatars are doing in different worlds. And they all say that the real, which comes to Vedantic thought, that none of this is real. So now tell us, does the multiverse exist? Why is it something that very, very serious scientists are taking as...
So just, this is one of those things. So I actually am an experimentalist. I work in the lab, and I measure things, I know what I'm doing. So I'm a very practical kind of person. So the multiverse is something, so all the names you took, these are all very well-known theorists, okay? So there is a group of well-known theorists who do believe that, this possibility can exist, and they have come up with different notions in that. one thing you may have realized, because you've been, doing a lot of, I think you know as much as I do in at least the how to explain things. Huh? She does a better job. There is no experiment. There is not a single experiment which has been done to actually prove the multiverse. Neither is there an experimental proposal on how you can do that. So, this is one of those notions which it sounds very good, but then as a practical, physicist, I cannot just go and say that, I believe in it, because I only believe in things that I know, I can measure, and I can verify. And, that is, I'm a very boring person. But of course, Hollywood wouldn't use quantum as much as it does if these notions did not exist, right? So, and one more thing I just want to add, that, that's my personal belief. But having said that, there's always a possibility that, we don't really know everything, right? Very few things we actually know. So there's always a possibility that it is in that realm. But then, in my, I'm not a believer of this notion.
Yeah. Okay, we're running 3 minutes late. It's time for cocktails and snacks.
Oh, wonderful, yeah.
Yes. But I'm just going to, while I'm going to call out 1 or 2 questions. Do you want me to, or do you want to break for drinks? Please raise your hands. Questions, okay. So I'm going to ask you to just respond.
Oh, there are questions, oh wow.
Yeah,
I'm thrilled, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But Urbasi, you said there's a quantum paradox to what you just said. You said you're an experimenter, you're a researcher, and you only believe what you can measure. But the very phenomenon of quantum physics is that it cannot be measured. It loses its quantumness when you measure it.
That's true.
So that is why this entire speculative world is the very heart of quantumness.
True.
So, and your experiment proved that there is nothing real. There is
nothing called realism.
Yeah. So now please address the audience on that.
So of course, this is a very important question actually. So, the quantumness exists, as the system evolves. But when you measure, it becomes very, very classical. So all these things we talked about, these infinite possibilities of zeros and ones, when you measure, it's either a 0 or a 1. Okay? So this is very important to note that, the measurement actually collapses the wave function. That is the technical way of saying this. So as you measure, you actually can actually measure something which is classical. So the whole quantum mystique, or whatever you want to call it, I don't call it that. It's because I'm a quantum physicist, I become mysterious, and I really am not. So then the whole thing exists till you measure. And so measurement actually collapses the wave function and makes it all classical.
So, some of these questions were actually for Karthik, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to, let's have cocktails and snacks and reconvene for a session on human creativity. This was on human ingenuity at its most cutting edge. And I hope that Urbasi will be there for us to literally, weigh in, like sweep into her and ask her about the mystery of this, that how can you deny that there is no other reality when just by measuring it, we are forcing ourselves back into only what we can see. She told me not to ask about Vedantic thought, but I think it's fascinating that there was this idea that all that we see is an illusion. It was a philosophical thought, and quantum physics is kind of saying, yes, that's true, but we are too shy to say it. So on that note...
No, I think that is where, this age thing that you brought in the way, very embarrassingly, I think that is playing against me, actually. I just have to grow slightly older to appreciate these things, I just don't seem to have time to think much, yeah?
Right.
So I think that is where I am. Sorry about that.
Right. Thank you very, very much, Urbasi. Just as maybe just something enough to make us all go and Google, there was one more point we didn't touch, which is teleportation. We've seen all these movies, Marvel movies, Doctor Strange. Yeah, she's come back. We've seen Doctor Strange. We've seen Spider-Man in the multiverse. We've seen Ant-Man going into the quantum. And we've seen all these fantastic things that can teleport. Well, they do teleport. They do manage to send things where there's no medium, there's no air, there's no airwave, and they're doing it. So this was just this ignition, just the start of a conversation. Okay, so they're working on experimental teleportation.
How do you start an iconic movement? Mannerism would say it's all about refinement and richness of invention. Classicism would say it's all about form and craftsmanship. Impressionism might answer, it's all about capturing the magic of every single moment. While Surrealism would find all of this quite, well, surprising. After all, it's about creating the icon of a new movement. Welcome to Forwardism, the new BMW 7.
Welcome to our wonderland. A glimmer of grace, a sprinkle of sparkle, and a dazzle of diamonds, all in our world of wonder.
May I request all of you to settle down? Clearly, those two sessions did trigger us more than the silence in the hall indicated. Ads, could I ask the bar to shut down? Good evening, everyone. I'll ask the house lights to be put off. Usually, Chennai has the most disciplined audience. But clearly, Johnny Walker's uplifting us more than it should. It's great that it walks along with us, but I would really request everyone at the back to please come in front and be seated. So, I'm sorry, I really don't want to cut into your chatter. May I please have your silence? We've been talking about technology all of this while, but next up is a very reassuring, familiar, and yet fascinating world of human creativity. But before we come to that, there are hosts that have made this evening possible. May I please request you for silence at the back? Ads, could I have everybody at the back please be seated? You know, with all the courtesy that is their due, I'll just reintroduce and re-thank everybody that's made this wonderful evening possible. You know, as I said at the start of the evening, Shiv Nadar Foundation really makes this possible month in and month out because they have a passionate commitment to enlightened citizenship, to create spaces which at its heart is about learning. And Shiv Nadar Foundation was set up by Shiv Nadar, the founder of HCL Technologies, a $12 billion technology company, but that believes in intersecting with human beings and human emotions. They believe in creative philanthropy, transforming society through education. They've spent more than $1 billion in setting up 7 institutes of eminence, the Shiv Nadar schools in Delhi and here in Chennai, the Shiv Nadar University in Delhi and Chennai, you know, where they have an alumni of more than 30,000 students. But fascinatingly, they really support educational initiatives in rural India with Vidyagan and Shiksha initiative, where they've touched more than 170,000 lives. And I think they really deserve a round of claps for that. As I was saying earlier, it's a wonderful ecosystem of partners because everybody in their own domain has really been pushing the boundaries. BMW, you know, which is synonymous with luxury in our minds, but has been very conscious about creating products that will be in step with the times. And they believe in forwardism, but their BMW i series is an electric mobility vertical. The car that they presented today is the BMW iX, which is really at the frontiers of electric technology. It believes in, you know, in collective responsibility, in joy reborn, as they call it, born again, because this is a future that we are all hurtling towards. We are trying to create those conversations here about shared ideas that will take us to a safer future, and definitely energy transition is one of them, and BMW is doing that. We have DLF, that's, again, synonymous with building, with 21st century modern living. Again, believes in creating intellectual societies, building communities. We have Johnny Walker, which you're all too familiar with, so I'm not even going to thank them. But, of course, they've been walking with us through this evening. And we have Wonder Diamond, which is, again, trying to, you know, create a new phenomenon in this diamond industry by creating lab-grown diamonds. They're in 5 states in they're in 5 states in 9 cities and in, you know, many, many centers here in Chennai itself. They have some of their products there in display. And of course, there's Brand Avatar that's helped make this, Hema Chandran and his team. Hemu Ramaya, another clap for the Conjurer of Chennai. And of course, my own team at Lucid Lines. Like we said, we are passionate about the power of ideas and communication. Often, often people ask, what's the point of this if there aren't positive, you know, empirical outcomes? But I really believe that there's a ripple effect in all of us meeting together and talking, and that's something that's important in a society. And there's Aditya Puri, Valmik, Kabir, Dibyangi, all of whom have made this possible. I just want to give one more thank you to 2 people who are here today. Ramji Narasimhan and Satish Mehta are 2 people who, when I was at my lowest and starting again, gave me the ignition that I needed, and I'd really like to thank them. They believed in me and stood by me, so thank you, Ramji and Satish. And now we come to that human creativity that I was talking about. I'm really excited to have the next 2 speakers here with us today, because both of them, in their individual capacities, have been pushing the boundaries of what passes for entertainment in our country. Vikram Motwane is somebody who literally birthed the first jaw-dropping, fantastic OTT series on Netflix, which was Sacred Games. And it really caught the country's imagination because it was production at a different scale, storytelling at a different scale, and it put us in that market. The new series that both of them have done, Aditi Rao Hydari and Vikram Motwane, have just delivered a series called Jubilee on Amazon Prime. If you haven't seen it, I suggest go home tonight and binge on it for the next 2 days, because it is absolutely stunning. And that's what got me so excited about having them here, because of their other body of work, which I'll just introduce. But this is human creativity at its peak. You know, it is detailed, it is beautiful, it recreates another era, it's emotional, it's compelling storytelling. and it is both of them at the peak of their art. Vikram, of course, has done a wonderful variety of other work. He's very experimental. Each of his work is very different. He's quantum in that nature. You know, that he's got AK versus AK. He had Uran, Lutera. He's been part of Sanjay Leela Bhansali's productions. He had a company with Anurag Kashyap. But he now has a company called Andolan, through which he's expressing his own creativity. Aditi Rao Hydari is amazing because she is, I'm sorry if I'm pushing the metaphor, but she's quantum in her own way because she transverses many languages, many mediums, and she's acted in 5 languages across the country and has been able to connect with that many audiences. So she has clearly many, many avatars. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vikram Motwane and Aditi Rao Hydari on stage. Do you have a left or right side?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, here you go.
Good evening. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, both of you, for being here. You know, as I said, that there's Jubilee, which is the immediate peg for all the excitement in having you both here. You're both back from Cannes, where you were amazing, you looked beautiful, and we're going to talk about that, you know, this thing on your CV that you're beautiful, we're going to talk about that as well. But let me start actually with you, Aditi, with that peg. It was wonderful to see pictures of you in Cannes, you know, where everybody almost kind of merges in that environment. Everyone kind of looks beautiful in their gowns. But you did something very unusual, which is that you wore this white sari and you thanked your grandmother and spoke of how proud she would be with having you there, you know. So when you were there, literally as an ambassador of the country, which everyone feels you're an ambassador when you're at Cannes, what were you hoping to communicate with a larger audience with your presence there? What did you want to stand for?
I think a couple of things. The first thing I think is to remember that at Cannes, it's not only about clothes and fashion and beauty. It is first about film. So, and I remember Vikram sir putting that up on his on his stories, and it really sort of almost made me feel like it told me something very, very important, and that was the first time that I'd gone to Cannes. But before I went, I remember, you know, there's a lot of pressure, and this sounds very sort of frivolous, but it's true. There's a lot of pressure because there are a lot of eyes on you, and you are representing not only your country, but also your industry. And apart from the fact that I'm very proud and I am very rooted in tradition, but I'm also expansive in the way that I think and in the way that I've been brought up. And I think it's so important to bring both of those into what it is that you do every day and every choice that you make. And there is nothing more beautiful than a sari, and to own it and to say that this is me, this is us, very rooted in tradition, but it sort of stands out at a festival, and also just to be authentic to yourself and to your choices. I think it's so important to never forget that authenticity. Right. And it is sometimes difficult because you start listening to people and you can get lost, and it happens to all of us, but just to remember that you need to be you, and when you are you, you will shine. And that you comes from your mother and your grandmother first, or your family first. Right. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to explore that thing of authenticity. I think that's a really important thing. But Vikram, before I come to you, because there was so much chatter, we actually made a very tiny film which indicates some of the sheer diversity of both your work. So I'm going to ask the console to show that before we delve into the building blocks of your creativity. So may I just ask the console?
I'm excited to see this. Where do I look?
Yeah. Preksha, can you just put the volume up?
जाके देख रिकॉर्ड में कौन है, इंसान है कि भगवान।
बाबूजी भोले भोले दुनिया पर भी हैं जी, तू भी गणेश कैतुंड है मैं सर्वशक्तिशाली इकलौता भगवान।
सुमित्रा कुमारी के ग्लास से शराब और कप से चाय, कभी किसी ने मना नहीं करा।
टाइम नहीं आपके पास, 10 घंटे, उसको बचा लो।
खिड़कियों से तुझको बुलाते हैं जो शटर नीचे गिरा के खुद भाग जाएंगे वो। हाय चमकीली खिड़कियों से तुझको बुलाते हैं जो शटर नीचे गिरा के खुद भाग जाएंगे वो। बापू जी भोले भाले बम का धमाका बम्बई राजा बम्बई।
मैं आपके हाथ जोड़ता हूँ, भीख मांगता हूँ।
मदन से बड़ी स्टार हूं मैं।
So Vikram, as I was saying, I don't know how many of you have seen Jubilee, but Vikram has literally recreated an entire era, which is the Hindi film industry just after partition and when 1947, basically, when India was born, and has recreated an era with such beauty that I really am a fan of that, Vikram. So first, a huge salute for that.
Thank you so much.
And both of you have done a fantastic role and job in it. But Vikram, when we are talking about creativity, there are many ingredients to that creativity. We enjoy the outcome of it, but there's a psyche of creativity. Can you explain yours? What do you think is the key things that make you, particularly Vikram Motwane, a kind of signature of creativity? What are your ingredients?
I think at its apex, I think there is, it's just the need to tell a story and the want to tell a story and to tell the story in the way that's most true to its, to the way one needs to sort of like tell it. So, and that's where it starts. Everything works around that. So in the Jubilee, if whoever's seen it, I mean, and I've got this question.
Can we have a kind of raise your hands who've seen it so we know how many relate to it?
That's not bad.
Okay, not bad. Yeah.
So it's, and again, a lot of the questions I get asked is, okay, it's about the era and it's about the film industry and it's about partition, it's about so many things. How do you manage to, and one of the things, and the main thing is always the fact that keep the characters at the center of the narrative and work every part of the narrative around the characters. If people get invested in people, and that is pretty much the core of any movie watching and especially series watching, you're kind of home and dry. And I think that's always been the creative tenet, has been get people to come in, to be able to watch a story, to be so invested that at some point in time they tend to forget whoever, where they are, what they're doing. And that's been sort of the driving force, I think, throughout.
But Vikram, when I was watching that, the storytelling is true and everybody says that the story is king, and now even more so. That's at the heart, that's literally the first stop. But when I was watching what you all have created, I thought it would be very interesting for everyone in this audience, in their own fields, whether you're a doctor, or a quantum scientist, or an entrepreneur, or an educator, to get something done to that level of perfection. We just consume it and you're kind of blind. That's why we called it the craft of the passionate imagination. What does it take, So tell me the qualities. Like, are you an angry director? Are you a dictator? Are you, are you very methodical? Are you mad? Like, how do you get it done?
I think I should answer this question.
Okay. Yeah.
No, and I'm not going to say it because he's sitting over here. And Vikram sir, you should also talk about your process yourself. But I have to tell you that, I think maybe a lot of us don't know this, but filmmaking is literally like running an HR department. And especially for the director, it's amazing because you're taking along with you, like, sometimes 150 people. And for each and every human being on that set to believe in your story, in your dream, and in the world that you're creating, and to take that whole team along with you with as much passion, as much love for that baby that you're delivering is incredible. And Vikram sir does it really, really seamlessly. And I promise to God, I am not saying this because he's sitting over here. I'm saying this because I myself was so like in love with this process of making Jubilee, and the fact that from the smallest, the newest costume person in the costume department to the creative producer to every single actor was so invested, and it was because he is the kind of leader that he is, and there was no hierarchy on set, and I think that's really, really beautiful for everybody to just work together as a team. It's really beautiful to do that, and I wish we could do that more, you know, especially us actors who think we are God's gift to mankind. But it's so nice to just work like you bring something to the table, and here is the captain of the ship who's basically pushing you to do more than your best. And you want to do more than your best. Not just for that captain, but for everybody on set who's bleeding for this passion project. It's really beautiful.
So
now you can say something.
So,
thank you.
No, so, you know, I'm going to come back. You said something about being pushed, and, you know, somewhere else you've talked about this psyche of yours where...
I have Stockholm syndrome,
yes,
100%.
I'm going to come and ask you that. But first, Vikram, you know, she's talked about this taking so many people along, and our platform is called Ignition. How do you find the keys to your actors? You know, so since Aditi is sitting here, help us understand, how do you unlock her? How do you find the key to her?
No, as she said, you're an HR manager on set, so you give my way of giving lots of hugs. This is basically like everybody's
Hugs?
part. Yeah, that's everybody's part of the family. You're all.
I am a big hugger.
Right, but I'm sure there are different temperaments. So
No, of course there is. I mean, you. So okay, look, short answer, and again, I mean, like quantum physics. It's a much. The short answer is time, a sense of fearlessness.
Sense of?
Fearlessness. You just, you know, like everything good takes time. And in the case of whether it's Sacred Games, whether it's Udaan, whether it's Jubilee, we've always had the luxury, whether we've liked it or not, of actually having time to actually go and create the material. Because of the pandemic, we had time to be able to actually go out and refine the scripts and prep the show and have the actors, you know, ready in a year in advance before we actually went and shot stuff. So you're efficient, you're ready, your team is ready, everybody's, you know, all with the same vision, and that really helps. From an ignition perspective, from a creative perspective, I think the two things that one is a sense of fearlessness, is the sense that go and try something that no one's tried before. And I think that every director who has succeeded in this industry, or in any industry in the world, has gone and done something that no one's really done before. And whether that's in terms of storytelling, whether that's in terms of a vision that is bettering something that's been done in the past. Quentin Tarantino is not the most original director in the world, but he's taken elements of pulp cinema and genre cinema and made them something phenomenal and new and brilliant, and done that. And every filmmaker has done that. So it's the fearlessness, but it's also the passion that you bring. And I think what Aditi also says is the fact that because I love my material, there's a deep sense of love that I have to the work that I do. There's a deep sense of love that I have to every single person on my set, whether it's my cinematographer or my costume designer or all my actors, in the sense that you're invested in your material, you're invested in them, you know that there is a deep sense of love. They know that there's a deep sense of love.
But can I break your bubble a little bit to ask that surely in all your work you've come across somebody that's not in harmony and in sync, or someone who's not somebody you're loving? How do you handle a tricky situation on set?
You break
An actor who's not performing.
You break things.
You break things.
on exactly.
Right.
The timing of that. Anyway. No, it's not going to happen. You're right. It's not going to happen all the time. I think that is something that, but that's what the prep process is for. You have a situation, you have time, and so okay. If you'll ask, what are the three most important things that go into the making of a film? And the number one answer is always script. Is always the number one answer. Casting is the second, and then mood. And mood kind of encapsulates everything from your pacing to your colors to your choice of music and whatever. That's the third thing, right? These three things.
But I'm coming back to the leadership question. That do you give yourself freedom to get angry, for instance?
Of course, all the time.
All the time? Okay.
Not anymore, maybe. Okay. Yeah, I've matured. I think with maturity comes, with great maturity comes great responsibility. I think.
Can I show you how Vikram sir sits on the monitor? Like, we've all given him a headache.
I'm editing in my head. That's what I'm doing.
So he doesn't get angry. He just looks like we're really troubling him.
Right. So, okay, I want to unlock both your psyches. There's a peep into creativity. You just said that you like to be pushed. You have Stockholm syndrome.
No, I just say that as if I don't have Stockholm syndrome, but I like to be pushed.
Right. So you like to be pushed almost like to break point, you know? What do you mean by that? And give us an example. And why do you think that your creativity flourishes? Are you in like that whiplash, you know, where you have to literally be bullied into
I'm
performing?
sounding like I need to straight away be taken for some sessions. No. So I'll tell you, like, I think I started dancing when I was very little. So I started dancing when I was 5. And I've always been in an environment where I've been surrounded by a lot of incredible artists. So it's always been like the art is greater than you are. You know, so you're always striving towards something, and it's always you're sort of trying to learn every day. And like the sari and my grandmother has been I've been very close to her, and she always remained a little child, you know. And I think that's, for me, that's at the beginning when I started, it's almost like people keep telling you, you need to grow up, you're such a child. But I think maybe that's my strength, to just be a child and to be fearless and to be transparent. And when I say that I like to be pushed, it's I actually got that first on Manisa's set, where, you know, you come to a protected environment where the captain of the ship or your teacher or your guru or your mentor or the director or whoever, your team, they really challenge you, where you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you're told jump. But the thing is, because you are fearless and there's a childlike kind of trust and surrender, you will jump. And you know that somebody will catch you and put you back on the cliff if you don't fly, you know? And I really like working in that kind of environment where I can be a child in a playground, where I'm nurtured and challenged at the same time. And I think that's what it is. I say silly things like Stockholm syndrome. I don't mean it. This is what I mean, that I really, I long for more experiences like that. And that's what I really look for. And when people even ask me about script choices, I know script is very important, what you play is very important, but for me, the director is the most important, because they create that environment.
You know, so for someone like you who's, like you said, submitted to art from the time you were a child, you've been a Bharatanatyam dancer, you're trained to do that, you sing, you come from I'm going to ask you about your family, but you come from a family that's created Osmania University and a school and Orient Langman and publishing. You come from that, from a very intellectual origin. And again, I mean, these are just things that I've seen on the net. I hope it's real. But apparently the first time an agency approached you, they said, you're too beautiful, you have beauty, you have, all the trappings, but you don't have what we're looking for to really turn you into someone big. Is that first a true story? And then what do you think they were looking for? You have talent, you have intellect, you have beauty, but they don't think you have what it takes.
No, what they said was actually, I was quite flummoxed, if that's the right word. So they said this, that you're beautiful, you're talented, you can sing and you can dance, so we don't know how to pitch you. And I just looked at them and I was just like, I'm really sorry. And then I went home, and the way I went is not to shout and scream and throw something. I just, I'll cry. And then I sort of wiped my tears and I was like, they're stupid. It's fine.
Okay,
and then Manisa found me, and then I was like, I'm okay. It's fine. I got into the films to be a Maniratnam heroine, and if I could do that, then I'm sure I can do something good with myself.
Right. So I'm going to come back to ask you, it's very interesting when we're trying to unlock how learning happens, for instance. And, on these platforms, you end up meeting wonderful, accomplished people. And it's interesting because Shiv Nadar Foundation is like an educator, they run in. But so many people have come and said, actually, a lot of their pivotal learning almost happens outside of school, And when I was reading about both of you come from divorced families. And you've actually said that in a strange way, your parents' divorce turned you into a filmmaker, it made you learn. Can you talk about that? What did you mean by that?
So it was pretty coincidental actually. So my parents got divorced when I was 10. The first job my mom got was as a production manager to a cousin of hers called Shukla Das, and they used to do these corporate films. And me and my sister would go on set, and it would be the most boring place to be because you'd be sitting there and they're doing these things over and over again, and your lights are hot, and you're like, okay, I'm never going to join the movies ever in my life. Until 5-6 years later, mom decides she wants to do a talk show for teenagers, and it's called Teen Talk, and it was on DD Metro in 93, 94. And I was 17, and I was in junior college, which is just the most useless time in any 17-year-old's life. And you were sitting in the canteen having chai and samosa all day, and she's like, you know what, you and your friends are going to start helping me out. And that's what I did. And eventually, on that very first day of shoot that we did over there, I was like, wow, this is magic, because that day went by like it was half an hour. I was like, I found, I was lucky enough. And yes, there is privilege there in the sense that because, I had a chance to be very closely associated with someone who was doing it. When my mom started doing, before she did this, she started this production company with the assistant director who used to work at Shukla Das's company, whose name was Sanjay Bansali. And so that's how they kind of like, so I got a chance to assist Sanjay in 97 when he was getting it on the,
Right, but those are the circumstances of, how
Yeah, of course those are. I'm saying, so there is the circumstances. So it's like, it's a lucky series of coincidences, I think, that's happened. And whether you call my parents' divorce lucky or not is I mean, yes, today it is. Because, so that's how it's sort of like, I fell into it. But I fell into it, I think, at a place when I was young enough to be able to, really build my career up from the time of 17 to when I made my first film. I'm 32. I think 15 years of being able to experience it. And I think, yeah, so that's how it happened. Right. Then you take your chances also along the way.
So, I'll just probe that a little bit more, not trying to do a pop kind of, psychotherapy here, but it's just that all your work, is kind of distinctive, and you've said again that you really like lonely characters. Even Jubilee, the central character, is someone who's always alone, misunderstood, really pushing against the boundaries. Is that something that I'm just reading into, or did the fact that you came from a family which, had divorced, did that play into your creative sort of preferences?
So it's, yes, I think I have an affinity for the outsider. I believe that there is like, I like that. I like the fact that, and by the outside is a very broad term. It's not specifically, in Udan's case, it's literally, in a sense, the outsider who's come back home to meet his, his father who he hasn't seen in 8 years. Or in the case of Trapped, it's about, a guy kind of like, who is the lonely guy stuck in that apartment. Yes, there is an affinity for that. I think that the character is, but I also think that's just good drama. I think good drama is always about kind of having a character who's just not, if this character in this situation, you want to make those two things as far apart as possible, because that just makes for good storytelling. And I think so it's a bit of both, yes. But yeah, but the affinity is to be able to say that, yeah, I always have this little soft spot for the lonely outside character.
You still feel yourself to be that?
I think there is a certain amount, not anymore, but yes, there is always that. I don't know when one gets over a sense of imposter syndrome. I think that's very real. I think it's especially when you're not from the film industry, and when you do succeed in the film industry to a certain point, you're always kind of looking over your shoulder, wondering like, is this real? Is it going to just collapse tomorrow? Am I going to be just like persona non grata? I don't know. There is that sense. So whether it's the same thing or whether it's just, I think everybody has it. A lot of people I know, I've spoken to some people about this. They're like, no, imposter syndrome is a real thing. People tend to have that. Chalo.
Well, ask Urbasi, it's not real.
Okay,
I think we got that message at least. But I wanted to come to you, Aditi, that. Again, it might sound a bit of a clumsy question, but do you sometimes feel this thing on your CV that you are really a beautiful woman? Is that almost like a drawback where you're cast in roles where you're always just framed as a very pretty face? You're not being given roles which will allow you to be really pushed to that absolute boundary. Do you feel that? And how do you relate to your own physicality?
Wow, where do I start?
You're looking at each other. This is clearly a conversation you've had.
Because I'm asked this question often, and I'm always like, how do I say this, and how do I communicate this correctly? One is that, again, I have not grown up being self-conscious, and I have been made to possibly question this constantly in the last in the time that I have been acting, because it is so visual, obviously. But I keep telling myself that it is not solely about that. Secondly, I don't think I need to be apologetic for the way that I look. It's genetics. I didn't do anything for it.
I think that deserves a clap for sure. You definitely don't need to apologize. I was asking, has it become a trap?
I know you are not saying it. I know you're not saying it, and I know that everybody asks this with good intention, but it's also something that I'm saying with as much honesty as I can, that to me it's not a trap. If it is to somebody else, I am not in control of what they are thinking. I will do my best because I love what I do. I love being an actor. I love being pushed into different mind spaces. In fact, when there is a part, and I get these parts quite often where I just have to it's more, about your physicality. I always say, but I love to go through these emotional turmoil kind of situations. I love love stories. I love getting in there and push. I love to be pushed, and that is my intention, and I can only my intention is what I'm in control of. I'm not in control of anybody else and how they think. Having said that, I actually think that a lot of directors who I have worked with me for reasons that I think are very important to me and to them. I don't think they've worked with me only because of the way that I look. Here's one, Mani sir. These are all people I will never question, whether it's Mani sir, or Sanjay sir, or Vikram sir, Mishkin sir, so many people for that matter. They might compliment me, but that's not why they cast me, and I know it. And I know that when I come to set, I come with all my heart, and I will not sleep till I deliver, and I see a smile on my director's face. And even when Vikram sir is standing like this, I would always do this to check if he was smiling.
Right. So, you've acted across different languages. You've acted with Mani Ratnam, with Vikram Motwane, and now Sanjay Leela Bhansali is going to make Hira Mandi, which is about prostitutes. Courtesans. Oh, is it courtesans? All right. I thought it's literally in... But can you talk to us about inhabiting these different languages and different cultures? Is there something drastically different in, say, a Tamil film set and what is expected in that storytelling to, say, what was expected when you're working with Vikram, to Sanjay? What are these, you're also quantum traveling between languages and cultures.
And
tell
I
us
love
about
it. I'm so blessed, actually. I really feel lucky.
But
to
tell
be
us
able
what's
to do that.
distinctive.
So, okay. I think cinema is, I'm going to backtrack a little to say that to me, and as a little girl watching cinema and not really having grown up watching too many films, when you watch a film, you are transported into a world, into almost like there's a suspension of belief almost, and you're transported into this magical world, and it makes you feel something. So the people in that film, the director, everybody, they are all working towards making you feel something. And growing up, it was more instinctive thing where I did not think, oh, this is a Bengali film, or this is a Tamil film, or this is a Spanish film. It was, this is a story somebody is telling me, and it's making me feel something. And it is, with honesty, taking me into that world. And I think that's what I respond to, and I look at cinema like that. So I don't think that cinema is about region, language, any kind of boundary. It's really about feelings. And feelings don't have any of these things. So to me, it's always been about a director or a team telling a particular story and me wanting to inhabit that world.
Right.
And to make people feel something. So at the end of the film, all I want, in whatever language, is to sit in your heart and go home with you. And I want you to keep me there. So that's my thing. And I think you can do that with a language, without a language, with anything. If you do it with love and honesty and authenticity, I think you can, like, it doesn't matter. And again, the experience of what makes it distinctive is actually the people who create those stories. It's really about them, their intention, their love towards telling that story. So the difference is not about it being in Tamil, or the fact that on a Tamil set you wake up at 7 in the morning and in Bombay you wake up at 10. It's not about that. It's
Is
about
that so?
yeah, I mean, like a lot of people say, like maybe there's a practical difference or whatever it is, but it's not about any of that. And I actually look at it, it's such a blessing to be able to inhabit different cultural spaces. I'm also very mixed. I have a mixed background, so I feel comfortable, but it's really to be able to work with these incredible people who tell beautiful stories.
So, I asked, like I said, it's a strange synchronous sort of commonality that both of you come from divorced families. And he said it did, in a way, one, circumstantially took him into cinema, but also in a way shaped his psyche. He wasn't fitting in, he enjoys lonely characters. In what way did that shape your creativity or your psyche? Did it in any way impact?
It's really tough for me to say because I actually grew up very, like, in almost like a utopian kind of world where I grew up around grandparents and cousins, and yes, I had a single mother, but I'm saying but, there was no but. And even today, like I remember even as a child, sometimes people say, oh, we're sorry. And even as a little girl, I would say, but why are you sorry? I'm perfectly happy.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing to be sorry about, And I think it's really about what you... It's really about growing up around people who are exemplary in the fact that they are not like feeding you anything, but you're seeing incredible people, incredible choices, fearless choices, but choices that are made with love and for the right reason. And I think choices that are made for the right reason empower you. And if you grow up around that kind of empowerment, then you can believe that empowerment, gentleness, empathy, kindness are all not mutually exclusive. Is that? Yeah.
But there were no contradictories.
No, but
there,
for a lot of people,
yeah.
sometimes there are, And I believe that you can have all of it
Right.
and be really, really happy. And it doesn't matter whether you have a single parent or you have both your parents at home or any of that. It just
Right.
matters what you take from it and what you are also given and shown.
Right.
It's up to you also.
So I'm going to come back to, what triggered you to want to be an actor. But Vikram, many of you have not seen Ghibli, but there's a very interesting phenomenon there which I wanted to explore with them, was that this is the birth of the nation, and cinema is like just coming into its own. And Russia and America are vying to control that creativity in India, and we know that CIA has funded films in America to push through a particular way of thinking. Right now, cinema is being used as a tool, whether it's the Kashmir story or the Kerala story or the liberal cinema that's being made. There's a big tension around cinema and storytelling. So talk to us about that, Vikram. Was that just a figment of your imagination, or did your research show that Russia and America really were trying to control India's creativity and storytelling?
No, it was all real. There was a lot of research that we did, and the character called Sayadhyans, who's actually in the show, was someone who was real. He was a cultural attaché from the Soviet Union who was over here. There's a reason Raj Kapoor traveled to Russia that often. It's not just because they liked his films. His films were very, very socialist, or borderline communist.
So you're saying all that socialist, progressive cinema of the 60s, 50s and 60s was actually...
No, it's not specifically, it's not saying it's Soviet funded. It's the fact that, but it's the opportunity that came to be able to say, here, look, here's an avenue that's opening up to you to be able to go and show your films if you have a slightly more socialist bent to your movies. And I think if you look back and look at the movies, at least from the Hindi film industry, of what was happening in the 40s and 50s, you take Raj Kapoor's films, which had a very definite socialist bent, and then you take Devanand's films, which had a very sometimes very specific capitalist bent. He always played this sort of like slightly gangster type kind of person who was, going to make his own. He was entrepreneurial in that sort of sense. So those were cultural, very subtle cultural sort of like, filtrations that were happening in the moment. The CIA did want to, at some point in time, ban a couple of movies that were being released in India because they felt that it was a time when, there was a lot of paranoia from both of them. So this kind of filtered down. And this we discovered in our research. We discovered this character in our research. We discovered these things in our research. And then we sort of like worked it into the story and we thought it was kind of cool to sort of have that. Yeah, and it just mirrors society today, I guess.
No, so right now with the whole success of RRR and just the entire environment around filmmaking has become so political, to express yourself creatively can have huge repercussions. What do you think, you were talking about the challenges of 1947 and filmmaking. Today, what do you see as the biggest challenges for filmmaking? And say, what is the impact of RRR actually been on which kind of films are getting money, which won't, etc.? What are your core challenges in filmmaking right now?
Oh, honestly, the number one challenge is to get people into the theater. So I'm saying
get people into the
movie theater. Just get them back into the movie theater to be able to watch films on a regular basis. Until 2017, 2018, it was a thing you needed to do. Today, it's a thing you want to do. But what is that want that's going to drive the audience to go? What is that excitement that you're going to create to get the audience to go? So that actually, for any filmmaker, is a primary, I think, concern, is to be able to say, what is our next 15, 20, 25 years of cinema going to look like? And I think right now is a period of time where maybe we grew up so we all grew up, I think, in a place and time when the movie was horizontally and vertically for the same audience. It didn't matter how old you were, and it didn't matter how rich or poor you were. You went and watched the same film. That has changed. Your youngsters are watching something different. Your older people are watching something different. Single screens is different. Even in a streaming world, there's a huge difference between what a Netflix watcher watches versus what a MX player watcher watches.
So how do you use that? And again, here I think is, we're talking about the film industry, but it could translate into everyone else's professions. When things are so bewildering, what do you use as a compass for your own life? Like how do you decide, I'm going to make this film? And
no, obviously it comes definitely from your own excitement to watch something. I am a huge fan of genre movies. I love action movies. I love stoner comedies. I love any of that kind of stuff. So yes, but I believe now is the time, and it's something we struggled with 20 years ago. We're like, oh, why can't we do a specific genre film? They're like, no, you have to. It has to stay within the Bollywood realm of filmmaking, music, and so on. And I don't think that's the case today. I think that now finally has changed. But
so there is money. I mean, after RRR, there isn't pressure to make that kind of, mega scope.
No, I think everything can exist today. I believe that there's a chance that you can actually have. There is the possibility of diversity. I'm saying, so whether it's RRR or whether it's Pathan or whether it's Drishyam or whether it's even from when you look at the Hollywood stuff, look at the way that even the new Spider-Man movie is doing right now. It's a complex film about superheroes and multiverses and that kind of stuff, and it's still doing well. So the fact that our audience only wants to watch a certain kind of movie is a lie almost in a certain sort of way. There's not. We are diverse enough to be able to go and watch multiple kinds of movies, and as long as the movie in itself is exciting, we will go and watch it. It doesn't matter. So it's not like, only a certain kind of. There's a moment in the Hindi film industry that everybody wants to go and make South Indian remakes, and I think that's just a bad idea because one or two will work. And even I think, in fact, no remakes will work anymore. Yes, because now you can dub the films in the original language. Why would you even remake anything? So every remake that they've made in the past year or two has failed because no one.
Right.
So it's not that. I think there is enough diversity to be able to go out there and watch many different kinds of movies whether it's in theater or in the streaming world.
Right. So both of you were painting a very rosy picture about creativity and getting stuff done. So just a couple of last questions is that. Tell me about something where you've really had to pull your gut out. Tell us something which has been really challenging creatively for you to do, or which has made you feel, there's been so much talk about the film industry, how difficult it is to break into it as outsiders. So either whether creatively or to get the break that you want, tell us about something which shows creative struggle for you.
Very honestly, you put your hand up, you'll get work.
Really?
But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of work. but I think the courage comes from saying no. And in holding on to what you truly believe in, the kind of work that you truly want to do, and to believe that it will come and that you will be able to do it. I think that is the first step of courage for anybody who is, getting into the film industry. And to kind of keep telling yourself that, your choices make you the artist that you ultimately become. And it's hard, but to hold on to that belief and, almost naivety, I would say. But I think it's worth a lot. It's really, really important. But the thing what you said about, that churns your gut almost, that kind of work, I would say that it's not about the challenging work. Like, I have been on many challenging sets where you're bleeding, nose is going blue, and it's been hard, or even emotionally it's hard. But there are certain, for me, the hardest sets are those where you realize after you start working that the intention of the people who are making whatever it is they're making is not quite what you thought it was. And for me, that is one of the hardest things, because then I have to keep my belief in, in the magic of cinema and that goodness, and okay, that we are making something, and that's really tough. So that's the only really difficult thing I faced, and I faced it a couple of times. But I know why I came there, and again, it's the thing of the only control you really have is your intention.
Right.
So you come in there with the best of your intentions, and then you say, okay, so this didn't go according to how you thought it would, but you still keep the belief alive, and you keep, working. And
Right.
so, yeah, I guess that's the challenge, to keep that childlike belief going.
Okay. So I'm on that note, I'm going to end and just quickly look if there are some questions from the audience. But last question to you, Vikram, while I'm looking up the question from the audience, is that if you were to look at all the people that you worked with, we were discussing both the building blocks of your creativity. But if there's one big lesson that you learned from, say, Sanjay Leela Bhansali and then from Anurag Kashyap, two people who've been very pivotal in your life, what would it be? And what's translatable in that for, say, the audience?
With Sanjay, it's like the plan is everything. With Anurag, it's the plan is nothing. So it's just, that's.
We're back to the quantum.
Because that's what filmmaking is. You can literally plan everything you want to the actual, to the precise nature on the day. But if it rains, what are you going to do? Or if your actor falls sick, what are you going to do? So you have to work around it. You have to always sort of work around it. And I think that is the whole thing. Be prepared. Yes, be very prepared, but also be very, very prepared to lose everything you have on the day, but still have to make the day, because at the end of the day, it's all about time is money, and no producer is going to come in saying, oh, you lost a day, here's another 25 lakh rupees to shoot another day. No, they're not going to do that. So you have to just make your stuff count.
Right. I'm going to end on that note, because it's a little bit late, because there was too much chatter after and it took away 5 minutes of our time. But listening to you both, it kind of reinforced that there's still a little bit of time before AI can replicate this, emotions. They can replicate intelligence and information, but emotion and passion is harder for technology to replicate. So while we have Aditi and Vikram around, we're still safe as a human species. And on that note, I'd like to invite Aishwarya, to give, they've been wanting to gift some diamonds to all the speakers. So you guys are going to, may I invite Urbasi and Karthik on stage, and Aishwarya to give away the diamonds. I think there should be a goodie bag for all of us in the audience as well. But as soon as Aishwarya is on stage, we'll end the evening, and thank you very, very much to everybody. I'm just looking for, Urbasi, can I have you on stage? And Karthik.
My baby,
You had the...
my baby don't care for shows, and he don't care for clothes. My
You guys
baby
are gonna wait?
just cares for me. My baby don't care for cars.
Yeah, is it done? Can we?
He don't care for high tone places. RuPaul is not his style. Not even Michelle Obama's smile. Something he can't see. It's something he can't see. I wonder what's wrong with my baby. Yeah. My baby just cares for. My baby just cares for. Baby just cares for me.
Thank you very, very much to everybody, and thank you to all our partners, and for you to being such a great audience. There's cocktails and snacks outside, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you.